find someone who has gone before you and ask for help. The most successful business people I know have a mentor, and they have a mentor that is similar in age, who is doing something adjacent, not necessarily the same thing, but adjacent. So it's not like you're competing for clients, but they are fighting some of the same battles. But then they also have someone who is older than them, who understands business and who will spend time answering tough questions about, we're stuck, this isn't working. Because so often where we get stuck is not connected to our products and services. It's connected to business as a whole. And we know what we do well, but we don't always know all the other pieces that come with trying to run a business. So find people to ask questions.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the founder and strategist of Distill Your Story, Ryan Holck. He helps businesses, brands, and solopreneurs to clarify their story, share it simply, and deliver it strategically so they can attract more leads and drive sales. Ryan, so excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me on today. I am doing really well, fighting some sinus stuff, but other than that, things are good.
That is excellent. You and me both, brother. We're always having those sinus issues, but hopefully we can make it through and try to keep that to a minimum, but it's okay if it comes up. We always like to ask our entrepreneurs, what were you doing before that kind of led you into this journey of what you're doing today?
I actually started as a musician, and I see behind you, you've got a couple guitars, which is kind of cool. So I was actually a piano performance major, and I found that in a lot of the roles that I had as a musician, I kept getting sucked into the marketing side of things. Like, hey, can you create a sign? We need a banner to go out on the street and advertise what's happening. We need all the needs that kept coming back to marketing. And what I realized in the process was my creativity just needed an outlet. It didn't have to be music. So I reached a point where I think actually marketing might be the way I could have a creative outlet and get away from some of the challenges of music in terms of timelines, and it's always in the evenings and things that weren't necessarily family friendly. So right before we had our first child, I took a marketing job at a place that had seen some work I had done and said, we like what you did. Could you come do it for us? And so that led to 10 years in a marketing role that started like as a part-time thing. And I ended up running the department at the end of it and learned a lot. It was an organization that had lots and lots of creative freedom. We had a great video team. We had a great creative group as a whole who could sit around and do what Disney calls, where you kind of blue sky imagine what could we do. And it was a great place because if you could figure out a way to say, here's why I think we could do it, we could find some creative money to try things. And we didn't blow lots of cash just trying everything, but it was a place where at least we had the ability to, let me go test this. And if it works, then we can do it in the future. So I really learned in that place that I loved marketing. I loved the creative aspect of it, but I really felt like I could probably help more than just one group here. I think I could do this for a lot of people and I could find a way to scale it. So I decided to launch an agency and walk out and go, okay, well, what if I did creative services for people who could never afford to have a full team in place, but they needed like this quasi space between a freelancer who they didn't know and someone they could actually sit across the table from. So I launched an agency doing that and doing lots of design work, website work. And that's kind of morphed from there over the last few years. I actually do almost more consulting at this point or creative CMO kind of work, but that's kind of where the journey has been over the past 22 years now, of going from, hey, I just need a creative outlet to, hey, I love this. This is a cool way to do this.
That is very cool. And it's always interesting to see how our journeys lead us into one area. Kind of similar when I was in a band trying to get 5 guys together on one timeline. Seemed like we had to wear different hats. So we had to be the creative director. Now we're trying to be the tour manager. We're trying to schedule shows and build relationships. But all of that kind of led you into a cool new position, opens up for marketing. You take that and run with it. And you had a little sandbox you could play in with some of the budget. But that just kind of sparked this new creative outlet for you. And you said, you know what? Now I'm going to help the people who can't help themselves currently. You're solving a need out there. And then over the years, I think that just kind of naturally progressed into how do I kind of redefine what my service offering is that really matches the client's needs. So kudos to you for actually building that all together.
Thanks. Looking back, there's some moments of incredible intentionality and some moments of stumbling forward, stumbling into some things going, okay, that worked. And other things you're like, that was a bad one. But one of my things is, how can I serve them well? And if I'm in front of these people, what do they need to be served well? And how can I take that and still be profitable in the middle of it? But really, at the end of the day, that's what clients walk away going, oh, he's a smaller agency, but he actually does better. He actually serves our needs better. He helps us get to our desired goals better than others do. And there's almost this boutique kind of touch to the services.
Very nice. Yeah. And it's kind of perfect blend where they don't need that full marketing team, but they still want someone big enough that can accomplish the task, but still small enough to still be personable and not lose that intimate relationship that you have with clients. Because that's just how relationships work and client work kind of brings together. But throughout that journey, you realize that the websites are main point of contact for a lot of business owners and businesses. And we're leaving money on the table if we don't either have a good website or if it's not optimized for converting leads into customers. So can you tell me more about your thought process behind the websites and then what you do to kind of fix them up to be better?
Yeah. So what I find with a lot of businesses, and this is a B2B issue and it's a B2C issue, is that there is this sense within us as a business owner that we want a website that looks great. And so a lot of businesses go, I need a website that looks amazing and does these cool things. So we start with design in mind rather than communication in mind. So often I go through the templates that I find online and I'm like, these look amazing. The business will build a website that looks pretty, but it's not going to meet the needs for their business. It's not going to actually drive traffic. It's not going to tell their story. They're missing key things that are important in what a customer needs to know about a business to actually make a decision. So I really came to this realization that I can build great looking websites, but great looking websites don't always serve clients well. What they need is a website that clearly articulates who they are, who they serve, how they make people's life better, and what is the dang next step you want me to take. I visited a couple sites doing quick reviews this week, and I'm like, I don't know what action you want me to take. I'm halfway down your landing page, and I'm confused as to what you want me to do. Or you've told me 12 things you want me to do. There's like no middle ground. So what I have found and what I've started doing is, what if we took a strategic approach to website development? We didn't start with, let's make it pretty. We started with, what are the core principles, the core things that you need to distill your message down to, that someone who's looking for services like yours needs to know. And so I built a communications framework called Distill Your Story Framework, where I walk people through, let's get the core elements before you ever build a wireframe, before you ever talk to a developer, because the reality is you aren't going to know what to ask them for to get a quote until you do some pre-work. And so I really like to start people with some of that process of, let's figure out the core messaging things. Then hire me, hire your friend, hire someone to write it for you. But at least we know what are the core things we've got to communicate for this business to actually drive traffic and leads.
Absolutely. And one of the issues that many businesses have, and I've suffered from as well, is just really understanding the direction and clarity that we want to go with something, right? We have this great idea and we're trying to put it into words, and now we have a vision in our head, but how can we articulate that to someone else who's trying to build it? And if you don't have the copy to complement that, well, I think they're not hired copywriters, they're designers, website designers. Sometimes both can be great together, but that's not always their expertise. So you definitely need to build that story.
Got to build the story. And usually that takes time and a process. And I'm finding with more and more of the businesses that I work with that the best way to do that sometimes, because business owners don't think like copywriters, is to just ask great questions, to start asking questions and documenting stuff and trying to figure out, okay, if I could take what took them 5 minutes and say it in 3 sentences, what would those 3 sentences say? so that the headline of their website and the hero section, the about section, the pieces that support their business are super clear and headline driven that anybody could grasp it in under 5 seconds.
Yes, trying to communicate that message. Visual communication is the creative designing piece. The words speak that, but visual communication also ties into everything that people kind of infer or think about your business. When you're building out these websites, this framework that you create,
Yeah.
I've heard that when some people are lacking their direction and how do I figure out who am I and what do I do? And they have this existential crisis. A great way is to actually ask any of your clients, how would you describe my service to others? And holy cow, that can be an enlightening moment to see, wow, there's keywords and phrases in a way that I would never think of myself, but your clients see us this way. And that's a great way to kind of lead the direction for your copy.
Very much so. And an example from my business, it's really interesting. I can do this for others faster than I can do it for myself. I overthink it all. But I asked the client, hey, just tell me a little bit of what you think this process has been like for you. And they came back with me that something that was the gist of, you helped us find words to explain what we do in ways that actually sound like us. So it doesn't sound like marketing. It doesn't sound like slimy manipulation. It tells our story in a way that still sounds like we're telling it, even though it's told more succinctly than if you were with them in person. And I felt like that's the core of this process, is being able to help people do that.
And then you have that foundation you can build upon that. Now, when you're considering a website, you mentioned things about taking a clear next step. Sometimes there isn't one. Sometimes there's one, but it's not defined, or there's 12 steps and you're like, I don't know which direction to go. Is there a certain next step that businesses should focus on? I know there's some up in the air, depends on your industry. What is the logical next step? Do we want them to fill out a form? Do we include a pop-up? Is there a banner ad? Is it the chat widget? What options do you recommend, or have you found the most success for that clear next step to the process?
So there are two potential calls to action. There's a primary that you're going to repeat a bunch of times over the course of your landing page, over the course of your homepage. It's going to exist a lot of times throughout your website. You may actually see it 7+ times on the homepage alone. What if people did absolutely nothing? What's the number one way that I would like someone to interact with me? And I typically tie that back to, what is the best way that people get into your current funnel now? Don't reinvent the wheel. Do you like people to send you an email? Would you prefer that they call you? You want them to get into your HubSpot accounts? What is that? And let's figure out how to say it in a way that fits on a button. That if I put a button in the upper right-hand corner of my homepage, I put a button throughout the content, I put links in the body copy of blog posts, that it's short enough that people understand why they should click there and what action is going to happen if they do. So, I mean, things like schedule a call, come in for a demo, book an on-site demo, those type of things, depending on the industry, are usually the first step but I really like to say, what is your business actually doing now? Don't make another layer of difficult. Don't add to it for yourself. What is working? Let's drive traffic to that. I have a client right now who just asked me a couple weeks ago. They said, I don't like the contact form. It's driving me crazy. We're getting contact, but I'm out in the field 90% of the day. I'm not getting back to people fast enough when they're contact. If they text me or call me, then I get back to them within an hour. I'm like, well, then let's just change the structure. Let's rejigger the calls to action on the site and change it, because it's got to work for you, but you also realize I'm going to give them a better experience with me if they have this call to action. So a primary call to action, and then a secondary. If they don't do anything else, what do you want them to do? Typically, I throw that some version of a contact page or a quick form or something like that. That was a really long answer, I realize, for your question. But the reality I'm finding for most businesses, it has to be congruent with what they're already doing. We want digital marketing to work. We want a website to drive traffic, but it's got to drive traffic in a way that actually works for us. The one caveat that I have is if you're going to send them to something like a call or something, find a dang way to track it so you actually know how many clicks are coming versus how many calls are coming. Where are they coming from? Are these actually legitimate people? There's lots of resources depending on the platform you're on to actually do that. There's ways to set up your Google Analytics to do that. But you just want to know, with a contact form, it goes into the database and I can say 50 people filled out the contact form in this volume of time. That's not always the case if you're asking for phone calls, texts, that type of things. So you've just got to find a creative way to make sure you're gathering data to support it's actually working in your marketing. But at the end of the day, it's got to work for your business first and foremost.
Absolutely. And no answer is ever too long-winded. This is the kind of knowledge and information that we're looking for, the insightful stuff that just, hey, I can't stop talking about it because it's important information to share, which is so helpful. So all great tips. Love that we revision our website a little bit, get it working for us. But now how are we going to get traffic into that website that we just optimized? I see that a lot of people are either throwing money at ads. Some people focus on cold outbound. There's a lot of different strategies for them. Have there been certain ways on a low budget that companies can be effective with their strategy in getting clients?
So I am finding that that the people I'm serving have got to have two things. You first of all have got to make sure, and I mentioned it just before, that you've got to have some sort of tracking, because if you're going to put money into something, I want to know if it's working. It's one thing to hope organic traffic just finds you. It's another thing to, if I'm putting $5, $10, $20 a day into something, I better be able to show that I did increase traffic. We got leads or we got people into the funnel so I can tweak the funnel. There's got to be something. But for me, the biggest piece is if I can figure out what message the audience needs to hear, that's going to be the most important part, because if I can't get them to even take action, none of the rest of the funnel matters. Is the way I'm talking about my business as clear as possible in this ad? Is the ad copy good? The beautiful thing about AI right now is it's helping. The Google Ads dashboard, the Facebook Ads dashboard, both has decent AI. It is not blowing my mind, but it is usable in terms of ideas and ideating what are variations on this. In early years of web, we did lots of A/B testing where you'd be like, let's try 2 headlines and see which one works best. Well, the beautiful thing about Facebook and Google is they'll do that for you. Here's 5 versions and tell me, start testing through them. And a couple things is make sure what you're starting with is super clear, especially if you're going to have AI help you. Make sure you read through every word the AI generated. And is this a clear articulation of who we are? Is it accurate about who we are? Did AI just make something up, or is it actually accurate to what our offer is? And then is it really clear what we're calling people to do, the action we want them to take? Because at the end of the day, I need them to click on that ad so that whatever budget I put behind it, I maximize my options. Now, the thing that I've been doing a lot of is doing super targeted ads. I'm not doing borderline cold outreach, meaning in this community, there's super proximity, 25, 30 miles to where this location is or what I might be promoting. But then I'm doing like micro niches. Like I'm looking for people who look like these 3 things because that's who typically buys this product. One of the local businesses that I serve is a formal wear, men's tuxedo rental, suit rental. They do proms, formals, weddings, quinceañeras, that kind of stuff. And so we have had great success doing micro targeted ads. I only wanted to show ads to people who are in this 15 to 20 year age gap, who have been doing these type of actions. And it's made the potential group go from super broad in the community to super narrow. But what it's done is increase the probability of that ad being seen by somebody who's actually looking to take action in the near future. So it's not going to be seen by 100,000 people. It's maybe only going to be seen by 10,000 people. But when I have a $10 a day ad spend, I'd rather it be to the right set of people than just to anybody in a community of 500,000. So some of those creative things, make sure your messaging is right. Figure out how you could micro target individuals or groups. We've even gotten creative with, and this one actually, I didn't like this idea at first, but I pushed back on the guy who was like, I think we need to invest in this. We started doing micro targeted radio ads. Like we found a radio program that showed that was only heard on ESPN 4 hours a week. And that ESPN show was to a specific group of individuals who liked one micro section of football. And I'm like, guys, this is the weirdest focused ad spin I've ever heard. And we started doing it. And what we found was the people we wanted to reach were there because it was the parents who were spending the money who were listening to the show. And so the parents were the ones spending the money for their kids. And because their kids and all their friends' kids were in those games that were being on that ESPN station, they started showing up at the store. And I'm like, okay, you took a side angle there that I did not get to, but wow, that is a phenomenal way to do micro targeting. I mean, that ESPN, essentially what they were doing was the baseball, football, like any of the school sports kind of stuff in the entire community and like 150 mile radius got time during those 4 hours every week. We started dropping radio ads and it worked because parents were like, heard you on the radio. Their kid played in that game and we heard you on the radio. Okay, that's not one that I thought was going to work. And so all of it to say, get creative with a piece of paper. Where do the people who spend the money on our product reside? For that business, they wanted students who were in a certain kind of life stage or life age. So they looked to the parents. For others, I'm looking for people who want solar and are thinking green energy. Where are they showing up? That's creative, where I don't need $30K a month, where I can do targeted ad spend and get creative. If I gave the right message, I could get my ad spend down. Where would a karate shop, a karate dojo in a small community need to put their stuff to get in front of the parents of people who have kids 6 to 18? And thinking micro targeting like that. I don't want to spend thousands. I have hundreds. What could I do?
Right. And you don't want to cast this wide net because you're going to get a lot of people who aren't interested, eyeballs on a piece of content that they aren't interested in. But I love that blend of traditional and non-traditional marketing. And sometimes even as marketers, we can be pleasantly surprised with a campaign thinking this isn't going to go the way we expect it to, whether for the worse or for the better. Right. But that kind of information gives us education for further ahead. We're going to ask you some more questions about tools and AI that you're using right now. A quick message from our sponsor. If you're tired of chasing those leads, it's time to double your organic lead and capture, nurture, and book them on autopilot using focus-biz.com. If you're a solopreneur or small business, tired of trying to follow up and chase these leads, who are going to ghost you after a few hours, it's time to let AI nurture and automate that buyer's journey for you. Now, Ryan, we wanted to ask you more because you mentioned earlier with AI, using it to create some ideas, maybe create some content or ideation off of what you built currently. There's a lot of cool tools out there. AI is another tool in our toolbox that we can use. Are there other ways that you're either using AI or you've seen other businesses who are starting to use AI as well?
So I'm using AI for the hardest part I'm finding for most of the businesses is to get something on a page initially to talk about their website. They're not used to writing. They're used to talking. They're used to sales conversations with people in their business. So is to actually help them get an initial version of something on a page so that it's easier usually to edit than it is to create immediately. So I talked about having great questions. And so what I will do is start asking a series of questions and getting them to just stream of consciousness. Here's bullet lists of the kind of answers that they give to various questions. I start dropping those questions and those answers into chat and saying, if you were going to talk about a business that provided X type of services, how would you use this information to create a landing page or create a section that talks about products and services, that talks about the benefits that people get from using services like this, and using then their own words to help drive the chat responses, rather than just going to chat and going, tell me what I should write as an owner of a business like this, and getting really mediocre content. But all of a sudden I'm getting content that's tied to the individual's responses. I've gone so far as to actually, as part of my framework, I ask a ton of questions, and then I've got a super complicated chat prompt that you put it in once, but it takes anywhere from 10 to 20 responses before it actually gets through the whole thing, because it keeps going back to the source and going, okay, then on the next section, and it dumps you out a rough draft of a landing page at the end of the process. It takes quite a while to get through it, but the whole idea was me just asking them and them going, oh, well, those are the 5 things. See, they answered that really fast. Like that approach, rather than tell me, write down the benefits that your business has for it. Business owners
That could be an 8-hour journey trying for them to think of this. Okay, board
Yes.
members, what
Yes.
does that look like?
Yeah, and it's, who do I need to call? Oh, Joe over in sales, he could get you that answer. And I'm like, yeah, but I think you actually probably know it as the business leader or the marketing director. Just tell me in your words. Let's get something on paper, because you're usually, it's a small brick and mortar or a small solopreneur or something. There are going to be other people in the conversation after the initial first draft is there. Someone else is going to look at this content. So you're going to have other eyeballs on it, but you need something to be on paper to give to them. So I'm using AI to help prompt and take their questions. I'm using things like Perplexity to do deep research and going, look at these topics, research top people under these topics who have services like this. What problems are they saying that they're solving? How are they talking about this angle? Where are their gaps? So I'm using it to do some of those kind of behind the scenes things that aren't necessarily the actual writing of the content that's going to be seen by visitors on our website, or sometimes it's in email sequences and stuff like that. But it's as much the research side that I don't want to sit and spend 3 hours trying to get this data, when AI will give me a spreadsheet and compare and contrast things for me. And all of a sudden, I like that word, I like that phrase. I can assemble those into a usable description that we can now get something on paper and begin to mull through.
I love that use of AI because, one, it's reducing friction within their journey. That onboarding process seems to take the longest, and just the brain power behind creating that. If you can give them something to work with instead of a blank slate, it's easier for someone to say that is wrong or that is right than to come with a fresh organic idea on their own. But great ways to implement AI. And I think it's based on also the prompting that you put in. For example, if I were to ask a chat GPT for similar types of headlines and prompts like that and research this website, it still wouldn't have those 10 to 20 unique questions that you've built into it that's now using that as reference and data as well. So it's a great use of AI. Ryan, wanted to ask, where can people find you online and get connected with you?
Yeah, so the best place is at distillyourstory.com. And there is a contact form there. There's a schedule a call form. There's links to my social channels there. It's a great way if you need some help with a website, you need help figuring out some of the messaging side of things. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. I do really quick website reviews for free. And essentially it's me hitting record on the Loom video and shooting a 5 to 10 minute, let me just go through your landing page and here's what I see, here's what I think is working, here's some of the things I'd make adjustments on. So if your group is interested in having a service like that, I'm happy to do that for them.
Thank you, Ryan. That sounds wonderful. And we'll have those links available down in the show notes and the description so everyone can take advantage of that offer. Now, what are you looking forward to most in 2025? It's almost April in 2025. Are you kind of sticking with everything that you've been doing right? Do you have new launches or campaigns or initiatives that you're excited about?
Yeah, I have a book that I'm working to finish up. The forward is the only section left, co-writing with somebody, and it's about telling the right stories in your business and how you make sure that the information you are sharing is clear, concise, and compelling. And so working on that, and I've been leaning into more on the fractional CMO kind of work and taking the pieces, and my agency could help fulfill some of that, or my freelance friends could help fulfill some of it. But the strategic side is so much of what I love doing. And it's why I love the messaging side, is it's more on the strategy of creativity. So those are really the kind of things that I'm leaning into in 2025.
Very exciting. If you either had to go in back in time and tell your younger entrepreneur self one piece of advice, or even just a piece of advice for other entrepreneurs, something maybe they're feeling stuck or they're spinning their wheels, what would be your piece of advice to them to help them get unstuck?
Ask for help. Find someone who has gone before you and ask for help. The most successful business people I know have a mentor, and they have a mentor that is similar in age, who is doing something adjacent, not necessarily the same thing, but adjacent. So it's not like you're competing for clients, but they are fighting some of the same battles. But then they also have someone who is older than them, who understands business and who will spend time answering tough questions about, we're stuck, this isn't working. Because so often where we get stuck is not connected to our products and services. It's connected to business as a whole. And we know what we do well, but we don't always know all the other pieces that come with trying to run a business. So find people to ask questions.
Brian, very well said. Appreciate that advice, because it can be tough for us. We feel like we're on our own island here. We just need to ask for help and start to get some mentorship to just lead us in the right direction and stop this anxiety and worry that kind of fills our heads at times. But I think that happens for many people. We appreciate you coming on, sharing your advice, tips, tricks, and wisdom with us. Anything that we haven't covered today that you at least want to, hey, I have one moment here. Open floor for you, Ryan. Take it away.
I feel like we've actually covered stuff pretty well, but I would just say that when you think about your marketing, the core idea of marketing is that you've got to be clear in what you say, but you also have to know beyond a shadow of a doubt the destination you are aiming for, because the only way you will know if your marketing is successful is if you can measure if you're getting closer to the goal each time.
Very well said, Ryan. Thank you again for coming on. We appreciate it. We will see you again next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.